Ladies and gentlemen, since we have been covered by the official version, I will say something unbuttoned and personal, which doesn't reflect the policy of my party, neither my party's government. So this disclaimer I want to put on the table in front of you. And I would urge you to imagine the Pakistan of the morning of May 6th. This is few hours before Narendra Modi decided to attack us. And that Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen, appeared to me, I can say this is a personal view, a dejected and despondent and divided nation. What happened? What changed? That today we are celebrating the achievements of diplomacy and how we are moving. I had a great opportunity to meet our diplomats around the world, also here in Islamabad, because long ago, between 2013 and 17, the then advisor on foreign affairs charged me with all the parliamentary business of foreign affairs. So I had to answer questions repeatedly, both in the National Assembly and the I have a long experience of meeting diplomats, and Pakistan's Foreign Office and diplomacy has, I'm delighted to note, been blessed with some very fine and exceptional individuals. There have been some time servers also, that's another chapter, but mostly very hard-working, very conscientious diplomats who carried their country's flag, even in places where there were only just 3 officers. I went to Senegal once and found a very small 2-room mission, and in many other places. So diplomats have been very capable. So this capability didn't arise after May the 6th. It has been there for decades. And in fact, if I may use a metaphor, what was in the 50s and 60s, maybe until the end of 80s, a shining dagger of Pakistan's national power seemed on the morning of May 6th as a rusty scabbard. So the question again is, what's changed? All these capable individuals had been there in the Foreign Office, were there on May 6th. CPEC celebrated its 10th anniversary this spring. So CPEC was also there, has been there for a while now. Similarly, this concept of, if I remember correctly, 2016 ECO summit in Islamabad, probably in this very hotel, in which the motto was, in which I had some part in crafting, was shared prosperity through regional connectivity. So that too is nearly a decade old. What changed? And so my observation and conclusion is rather undiplomatic. I think Pakistan's leadership changed. So if any credit is to be given, is to Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir. And what changed in them that didn't exist? I don't know who said it, but whoever said it beautifully. That courage is the first among virtues because it makes all other virtues possible. So actually this courage changed. This policy that we saw of Pakistan appeasing India, beginning 2018 and ending in 22, that changed. And this enunciation that we will respond, and not only respond, but quid pro quo plus, that changed. And actually, it's this courage at the very top that has driven this new diplomatically vigorous Pakistan that we see today. Because many of our partners who are now coming forth and offering cooperation were precisely the ones who were keeping some distance from us prior to May the 6th. Again, as I said, first thing I told you, the courage and the leadership changed. But the second is that our long-standing partnership with China, our defense cooperation, finally had an expression during Markai-Haq. That changed, because something that had been going on for many, many years and decades, that changed. That there was this expression, and suddenly the world is still shocked that Chinese technology was, we demonstrated it to be the peer of Western, highest Western technology. So that changed, and that opened many eyes and ears and focused many minds. And of course, the world had changed. And what it was that Pakistan demonstrated during Markai-Haq in the changed global atmosphere brought attention to Pakistan. And we should, all of us, every morning, thank all our leaders, defense officials, bureaucrats who protected our nuclear deterrent all these years. We have to thank them also. Because that profound foundation of Pakistan's security in the changed geopolitics once again allowed us to assert ourselves. There was a little bit part of diplomacy there. I was fortunate to be part of the PM's mission, diplomatic mission, to different world capitals this summer. And what we heard everywhere was universal praise for two things: Pakistan's transparency and Pakistan's wisdom. So these two words need some unpacking. So the transparency part, I'm happy to ascribe to officials here in Islamabad and to our diplomats abroad. So we were very happy to hear everywhere we went, in the UN, in Washington, London, Brussels, that our ambassadors had been proactive in briefing their hosts repeatedly, not just once, that they had kept them in the picture. And that brought universal praise, because on the other side, on the Indian side, there was complete sort of lockout of information. And the contrast was very clear. So this, and of course, Pakistan's wisdom in not responding precipitately on May the 10th when India fired missiles at us. And that drew universal praise. So yes, there is some measure of renewed understanding in the state of Pakistan that 21st century conflict is also an information conflict, but mostly an information conflict, less a kinetic conflict. And of course, this notion, again, at the highest level of Prime Minister and Field Marshal, that they showed restraint on May the 10th. So that changed. And then, of course, we have been, as they say, fortune favors a prepared mind. So we were prepared. We had kept our deterrent. We had demonstrated the strength of our arms during Markai-Haq, so that when the US leadership unshackled itself from the US establishment's point of view, which was very deeply pro-India, so Pakistan was there to take advantage of that change in fortune. And then, just like Modi's hubris, some credit, a little credit has to be given to Benjamin Netanyahu's hubris also, who overreached and allowed Pakistan's diplomacy to assert itself, and we are seeing the fruits of the reaction to that hubris and Pakistan's renewed relevance, something that we need daily work to bring it to fruition in a serious way, because three fronts are open, both on the eastern front. The threat is still there. A new threat or a renewed threat is now visible on the western border, on Afghanistan. And the third front, ladies and gentlemen, is internal, of this insurgency that we face in the name of Fitnatul Khawarij, Fitnatul Hindustan, both in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. So these three fronts are still open. Two of them, maybe all three of them, require diplomacy. They require constant engagement with friends and foes. Pakistan's, the strength and resilience of Pakistan's diplomacy will be much needed in the coming days. Of course, it will also be needed on the new issue of what Pakistan's role could be or should be in Gaza. That is a question. So I would leave you actually with just very vague recommendations which governments find difficult to implement. First is, of course, as we saw during Marka-e-Haq, what was praised as transparency. I think our government and the state needs to do a vastly better job of enunciating Pakistan's interests. So it has to be not only in the media, but also in parliaments, in the Senate, in the National Assembly, to clearly come out and say what Pakistan stands for. Otherwise, in the 21st century, one leaves vacuum for trolls to fill, who of course are not bound by any national interest, are bound only by their need to earn dollars through likes and retweets and the sort. So this communication space is extremely important as we go forward on these three fronts. And secondly, I will not teach diplomacy to diplomats, very distinguished diplomats sitting here. I can only request the leadership for boldness, particularly with our South Asian neighbors. We need to be, even if, there are always people who say, if you do this, it's this dangerous, or this is bad, or this is awful. But this is a time that calls for boldness in stepping out, in offering genuine regional and economic cooperation to our South Asian neighbors, to our Central Asian neighbors. And that's why Afghanistan is so important to resolve, because we need an access to Central Asia. But this talk that we've heard now for 3.5 years, we need to walk the talk of geoeconomics, ladies and gentlemen. If we are genuinely interested in taking Pakistan forward, it will also help us in dealing with the third front, the internal front, to kindle economic growth, investment, and to, of course, which should be the highest aim of any elected government, to bring jobs to our millions of young men and women across the country. That will strengthen Pakistan. The diplomats have always been there, and now that they are led by leaders of courage, I believe Pakistan's diplomacy can once again reclaim the glory days of the 50s and 60s. I remember, if correctly, I went to The Hague once, and the then ambassador showed me a plaque on the wall, which was sometime in the 50s. That was a letter of thanks from the Queen of Netherlands to the people of Pakistan for helping Netherlands in floods. So there have been days like this, there have been occasions like this, and if we continue with courage and boldness and this sense that this rare opportunity has presented itself, I was hoping Ambassador George Salim will once again quote the poet Seamus Heaney and say, hope and history rhyme, but of course I'll give you a much more cliched quotation from William Shakespeare said, there's a tide in the affairs of men, that when rises has to be taken at the flood. We are at the flood, ladies and gentlemen, in Pakistan's diplomacy, and I hope we have boldness and courage and the capacity for hard work and this serious resolve to solve our internal problems, that I hope we can take this flood and take Pakistan's flag higher and higher. Thank you very much, Pakistan Payandar.
Than not, when we meet in such conferences, roundtables, seminars, we begin to introspect. This is good. But very soon that introspection turns into criticism, and then that criticism turns into bashing, and that bashing goes on to the point of debasing yourself. So once in a while, it is good to step back and reflect on what you have actually achieved. So congratulations, IRS, Ambassador Salim, for providing that opportunity, because we also deserve a little commendation on what we have done. You know, one statement attributed, I think, to Henry Kissinger, but probably has now become a cliche, that there are no permanent friends, no permanent foes, but your national interests are permanent. That's often said. But I believe every nation, including Pakistan, holds certain principles of foreign policy very dear and close to our heart. For example, Pakistan has always stood for Muslim causes, supported them, as have we done for the people of Jammu and Kashmir for their struggle to achieve self-determination. We've also nearly always expressed the desire to have friendly, cordial, constructive relations with our northern neighbor, China. And we've also always maintained our faith in the principles of the UN Charter and never wavered from them. I believe that in doing all this, there have been also areas where we have been changing our foreign policy depending on the circumstances. But overall, our profile in terms of diplomatic achievements is praiseworthy. We started off in 1947 with literally no state infrastructure and carved for ourselves a place in the Committee of Nations. We managed to deal with a regional bully, many times our size and resources, and we formed partnerships with many major powers to our advantage. This is not a small achievement. But then we have also had our challenges. And we must also acknowledge that these challenges are there and we got to deal with them. We are often accused of falling victim to what is called dependency syndrome, depending on foreign aid. We have also been accused of following security-centric policies. And we've also been rather casual in providing space for extremist entities within our society. We should be very candid about all that. But somehow I feel like Engineer Khurram Dahir, that something changed in 2025. I do agree with him that it was May 2025. And the courage we demonstrated to stand up and defend ourselves and our nation. I know that on 10th of May, we proved to the world, but I think to ourselves also, that we can and we must stand up to a country that has been aggressing against us ever since the creation of Pakistan, more so in the last 1 decade or so. And we were also successful in busting a narrative that had been created since 9/11, that Pakistan perpetrates terrorism. I think the Pahalgam incident was the first one that exposed India's lie. Because it is India which had been using terrorist incidents, militancy, to malign Pakistan at the drop of the hat, and now had gone to limits of crossing Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity. I'm also happy, like you are, that our relationship with China, particularly the economic cooperation, is back on track with the unfolding of CPEC 2.0. But I must caution that this optimism is conditional to addressing the security concerns that continue in our country. But I am confident by the firm action that the government of Pakistan took against a terrorist entity this time, and also against terrorism flowing in from Afghanistan. If we can continue that, I believe investments from not only China but also other friendly countries will have much brighter prospects for our economy. I am also pleased to see United States deepening its economic cooperation with Pakistan. I know Ambassador George Salim has mentioned in detail about most of the points I am raising. But here I believe that there are concerns in the country whether the United States will be a reliable partner or not. My sense is that this debate must be changed in its entirety. Yes, the United States is transactional in nature. It's a big power. It has to be. And we should also accept the reality that much of economic cooperation with the United States will be transactional, and while the sun is shining, why not accept those investments in our mineral sector, in oil and gas exploration. Here, I would say that some of our colleagues and friends believe that Pakistan not sail in two boats, should pick one side over the other, but I don't subscribe to that logic. In times when cooperation and confrontation coexist between states, Pakistan has the ability and dexterity and finesse to maintain relations with both the US and China, provided this cooperation is predicated on our own national economic interests. If we can do that, and I believe we can, we should welcome our newfound excitement in relations with the United States in terms of economic investments from the US. I'm also pleased with the improvement of our relations with the countries of South Asia, such as Bangladesh. Perhaps some of them are sitting here, their representatives, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives. They all share a commonality, because we are all victims of India's dominating, condescending attitude and policies and hegemonic policies. And I think India's hegemonic attitude has also given space for China to come into South Asia and develop bilateral relationships with all these countries that I'm mentioning. So we do see some better prospects for diplomacy to work. In fact, there is now a talk of SAARC plus China minus India. And it's only because India is not ready to take the region along. I'm also happy about the unprecedented upgrade in our relations with Saudi Arabia, which have always been cordial, no doubt about it. But with the signing of the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement and associated desire by the Saudis to invest in Pakistan, this is indeed a welcome news. But I would say that we have seen times like that in the past also, but these opportunities can only be availed provided we develop in-house capabilities to prepare and benefit and implement those projects, and also develop legal capacity to negotiate better terms for the interests of Pakistan. In the past, unfortunately, this being an area we didn't do well, and as a result, many of these international partnerships ended up for disputes and arbitration. I'm also happy in improvement in relations with Iran, which has now discovered through its 12-day war with Israel where India stands. So I think Iranians are much more conscious of the positive role that Pak-Iran relationship can play, as is evidenced by the President of Iran speaking on the UN General Assembly podium and announcing Pakistan-Saudi partnership, the defense agreement, mutual defense agreement. Likewise, our relations with Turkey, Azerbaijan, UAE, all a breath of fresh air. I would identify 3 challenges that would also need to be addressed while we speak of our achievements. One is the Indo-Afghan nexus, which poses serious threats to us. And I think we need a whole-of-the-nation approach to deal with that nexus. I sense a degree of confusion and lack of consensus on our policy in Afghanistan. And I think a lot of work needs to be done by our government to build a consensus, especially taking on board those who have soft corner for आइए मिनिस्टर साहब. A warm welcome to the Minister. We have already heard the Minister of Defense and his successor, Engineer Khurram Dastagir, and former Minister of Defense. And we've all been happy that Pakistan has situated itself in a position to celebrate our diplomatic achievements. And I think there is a consensus, at least between me and Engineer Khurram Dastagir, that it was May 2025. We changed all that. But after having enumerated all that, I just was enumerating the challenges that we also need to deal with. The first was Indo-Afghan nexus. I think I've already talked about it. But the second is internal. We need to change our mindset. We need to change our mindset towards self-reliance, to building our in-house capacities, not always relying on the outside. You remember I identified the dependency syndrome. Let's come out of that dependency syndrome. Allah has given us all the resources that we need. Mighty mountains, we have pristine beaches, we have archaeological heritage, we are a bastion of faiths, multiple faiths. So I think a nation like this one cannot be stopped. We all need to have that self-confidence, that courage that Khurram Sahib you were talking about, and there is no stopping there on that. And third, I believe, is the world of narratives. For the last 2 decades, we really suffered from that. A very good example is how India was able to use terrorism to beat Pakistan the world over. And my own research tells me actually it was India which was perpetrating and had established a pattern that blamed Pakistan, let the investigation take place for a decade or so, and if saffron terrorism comes out as the main reason, hush it up. We got to work on our narratives, and I'm very happy that institutions such as IRS and our academia are actually working on this. And I believe geoeconomics too is very much a part of it, because we have to convince ourselves that geoeconomics can work for us. After all, no other country has an economic geography that Pakistan has. Finally, the words of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. His advice to us was that we should pursue a foreign policy that should have friendliness and goodwill as the basis for all our relations, not have aggressive designs against anyone, and also must practice honesty and fair play in all our national and international dealings. What a wise pearls of wisdom. And I believe to a fairly good extent, Pakistan has followed that. Allah bless you all. Allah bless our country, Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Chaudhary, for your insightful remarks. Next, we have Ambassador Asif Ali Durrani, who is the former Pakistan Special Representative for Afghanistan Affairs. Sir, the floor is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ambassador Jawhar Salim, Honorable Minister Khurram Dastagir, dear colleagues and friends. The tone has been set by Jawhar Salim and the Minister of Defense, and then followed by Minister Khurram Dastagir's candid remarks. And I think that should be enough for us to ponder over and have self-assessment. We are happy that we are celebrating our successes recently after a big challenge. But at the moment, we are faced with the biggest challenge that is, and in our history, is terrorism. And 2025 would be recorded as the highest number of casualties and terrorist attacks which took place till date. And we still have to grapple with that. The TTP-BLA related terrorism and Taliban's dubious role cannot be underestimated. And there's a need to address that. Kinetic approach is possible, but that's not enough. We have to realize that at the moment, while Afghanistan still for the past 46 years has become a war economy, unfortunately, unintentionally, our true promises have also been dragged into that war economy, and it's KP and Balochistan. So while we celebrate our successes, be mindful of the fact that what the PLAs are doing, and they are doing within our own geography. We can blame the Taliban. Yes, they are taking the sanctuaries there. Same is true about the TTP. The bulk lives in Pakistan. What you have to do is to smoke them out. The moment you smoke them out, they'll become irrelevant in Afghanistan. They'll become orphans. And that's very important. Yes, we had successes after India's misadventure, and we proved our prowess. And that has been acknowledged internationally. We should celebrate that. But at the same time, there is no room for complacency. Ambassador Azaz Chaudhry talked about Indo-Afghan nexus. What's going on? That's very important. For me, India can only help Afghanistan financially. But we have the geographic advantage. They can't do much. And Taliban, they'll be ready to get their money. But this would not be a new development. Traditionally, Afghanistan has been receiving Indian money since Zahir Shah's time, or ever since we came into being. So this is not something new. And for Afghanistan, that's a rent-seeking approach. For them, that's there. But at the same time, when you see diplomatically, then give credit to the successive Afghan governments that none of them ever gave the pleasure to India to approve or to endorse India's stance on Kashmir. They always maintained a neutral stance. Recently, there have been reports that Mutaki did talk about that, but that was misreporting. I can say on authority. India, and here lies the problem. Taliban are not professional diplomats. And they, in fact, were misled by the statement which says that Afghan government condemned Pahalgam incident. Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir, India. This was the Indian machination to hoodwink everyone. And Taliban could not get the facts checked, and they could not say it. This is just a footnote I wanted to tell you, but at the same time, it's important that if we want to be bridge, or this is what we claim at the moment, is that we are a bridge between South Asia and Central Asia. You take out India from South Asia, we are not a bridge. You take out Afghanistan from the equation, we are not a bridge. So we will become, in a way, a landlocked country. So how we achieve that, that's important. And that's the test of diplomacy, which we will have to work hard, that how we achieve that goal. That's very important. Yes, we can celebrate. We can celebrate that. Geographically, we have the advantage. It's like that we are sitting on trillions of dollars worth of rare earth material in Balochistan or KP or elsewhere. But right now it is rock and dust because you don't have the capability to exploit it. And if you leave it to the foreign investors, I can assure you they'll take the bulk. You will be left with pittance. So it's better to wait for developing your own capabilities, develop those capabilities, and only then it would be profitable, like the Chinese did. But they waited at least for 3 decades. Do we have the nerves and patience to do that? That would be important. So yes, well, we should celebrate by all means. It has been a year for celebration, but in a particular area. Diplomatically, we still face challenges. Just look at geographically. You have a permanent adversary on your east. You have unstable Afghanistan. I won't call Iran unstable, but it's vulnerable to Israeli machination, American machination. And at the same time, we celebrate our newborn homie with the Americans. But my advice would be to build your relationship and have a strengthened regional policy. If you're strong within the region, you don't need allies far afield. And that should be the policy. By all means, have good relations. By all means, good relations with all of them, including the United States. But the issue is, you have to build yourself. There's a Farsi proverb which says, "Mushkan ast ki khud biboyed, na ki attar biboyed." Fragrance is the one which speaks for itself. The perfume seller who says that this is mushk. So here we have to develop our muscles. We have all the capabilities, whether it's diplomatic, whether it is military, and the internal cohesion talked about by Minister Khurram Dastagir, also by Foreign Secretary Azaz Chaudhry. That's fully agreed. But what we have to do is actually has to bring in rule of law in the country. What you see today in the form of TTP or BLA, BLF, is because of the erosion of rule of law in the country. When you opened your borders 46 years ago for the Afghan Mujahideen, Muhajirin brothers, you eroded the rule of law. And then that continues till date. We have to take strict measures. And now we are cribbing about the sending the Afghans back to their homes. So we have to again reassess what we are up to. We should celebrate by all means. That's very important. It's always good to have happy moments. But don't forget, we are sitting in a vulnerable region. And as I said, I repeat, we are fast becoming part of the war economy. Already our 2 provinces are part of the war economy. Please do something. And you, with regard to BLA, you make them irrelevant if the genuine people are there. They are the stakeholders. Same happens. You want to make TTP irrelevant, smoke them out. So you have to actually make the people responsible for the law and order. Make them take the political ownership. Make the police as first responder, because you cannot beat the intelligence of a Thanedar. But all our intelligence agencies will be failed in front of Thanedar's intelligence. But he would not come forward. Reason is, he does not enjoy the political ownership, because if he takes action, tomorrow if his family is killed, he'll be standing alone, cold in the neck, and naked in the cold. So we have to go back to the drawing board one day, and I think we have all the trappings, of becoming a superpower. But only, like I said, we are sitting on trillions of dollars worth of mines and minerals, rare earth material, but at the moment we are sitting on rock and dust. So we have to exploit that.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Ambassador Johar Salim, Honorable Khurram Dastagir Sahib, former Federal Minister for Power and Defence, Honorable Ambassador Azaz Chaudhry Sahib, Ambassador Asif Ali Durrani Sahib, Ambassador Dr. Raza Sahib, Zahid Hussain Sahib, Syed Hassan Akbar Sahib, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is always an honor and a privilege speaking at this forum of IRS, and I am eternally grateful for organizing today's seminar on the subject of diplomatic successes. I would, at the very outset, like to acknowledge the contributions of our foreign service towards successful diplomacy. The world acknowledges that Pakistan has one of the best foreign services globally. We have a great legacy left by great individuals and legends such as Sahibzada Yaqub Ali Khan and Jamshed Markar. And I'm very proud to say that that legacy has been carried forward well by the professionals of our Foreign Office. And I often witness the effort, the skill that goes into diplomacy, because diplomacy is an art. It cannot be learned overnight. It is something that is not only complex, but it really takes time and effort to acquire those skills. So I would like to pay my compliments to all the former and serving ambassadors sitting here who've done a great service to Pakistan. We're all very proud of you. Thank you very much. And we witness this wherever we go around the globe, that even with meager resources, the way our diplomats have kept our flag flying high and the way they have contributed immensely towards the cause of Pakistan, these services shall always be remembered. And when we talk about the contemporary situation that has arisen in the region, Pakistan has always had that advantage of being at the crossroads of civilization, being strategically located at a very, very relevant place, where on one side we have a landlocked Central Asia, on one side we have China, a strategic partner to Pakistan, and then, of course, as very rightly and in detail and enunciated by various speakers here, the whole India-Afghanistan situation which we are currently faced with. But what was the difference in May 2025? Pakistan has always been falsely accused of promoting terrorism, where in fact, I always say that Pakistan is the biggest victim of terrorism. No other country can claim that it has laid down 90,000 lives in the war against terrorism. No other country can claim that they have suffered losses of hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of economic losses. And we're a nation where not only officers of our armed forces, jawans of our armed forces, law enforcement agencies, civilians, but our children have given sacrifices. You've seen the APS Peshawar attack. You've seen the attack recently on a school bus in Khuzdar in Balochistan. No other nation can claim that their children have also laid down their lives in this war against terrorism. So what was the difference? As rightly pointed out, before the May 2025 war and right after the war, it was great diplomatic efforts reaching out to friendly countries and clearly explaining the situation that we are faced with. And it takes skillful diplomacy, And it takes a lot of courage and effort to get the message across. So I think those diplomatic efforts must really be acknowledged. And you saw that when the escalation started in May 2025, the Prime Minister led from the front, and you could see him interacting with ambassadors from different countries and reaching out and explaining the situation on ground. And the turning point in this escalation was that when speaking at PMA Kakul, the Prime Minister offered an impartial investigation into the Pahalgam incident. Now, this offer to investigate the Pahalgam incident was not a mere statement. It actually proved that Pakistan had clean hands, that Pakistan had nothing to do with the Pahalgam incident. And when this statement was made loud and clear, I think we made it evident to the world that we are not only willing to cooperate with an investigation, but we are actually eager for an investigation into the incident. Because a country which suffers terrorism cannot promote terrorism. These two contradictory sides cannot go together. So I think that really turned around the tide, and we received overwhelming support from across the globe. And a lot of friendly countries not only supported Pakistan, but they clearly stated that since Pakistan has offered an investigation, there is no more room for further escalation. But India had nefarious designs as always. And when we look back, we see that how the two-nation theory has become strengthened after May 2025, because India had hegemonic designs. India had this false notion of rising India, this false notion of being the leader in South Asia, or if I may be allowed to say, a bully in South Asia. But Pakistan, as always, proved to be a balancing factor in this region, a neutralizing factor in the region, because a war which we never desired was imposed upon us. And when that war was imposed upon us, we've hardly seen this kind of synergy and cohesion. The whole nation came together behind our valiant armed forces. And we rose above our political differences. Yes, there is a political divide in the country. Yes, there is polarization. Nobody can deny that. But when we were faced with an enemy who wanted to prove its military dominance in the region, we came together as a nation. And the nation, united as one, gave a befitting response to the enemy. And the armed forces led by Field Marshal Sayyid Asim Munir defeated an enemy 4 times as big as Pakistan. And India suffered a humiliating defeat, which they are still not able to digest. Just a few days ago, I did a press conference in which we revealed that they're still trying to hatch certain conspiracies. And a fisherman from the high seas was caught by the Indian Coast Guard and was tasked with a certain assignment to procure certain uniforms so that they could pin an incident on Pakistan, another false flag operation, which we highlighted just a few days back. So they're always trying to conspire against Pakistan. Our military response was befitting, that within a few hours, they were compelled to a ceasefire and they requested for a ceasefire. And I must also mention that the way our Air Force shot down 7 planes, which has now been mentioned more than a dozen times by the US President himself, that is a clear evidence of how our Air Force, led by Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmed Babar, defended the motherland. So we proved our military dominance, that we were never desirous of a war, but when war was imposed upon us, our armed forces gave a befitting response. The whole nation came together, politicians, the entire country, the whole media, and I would also like to pay my compliments to the Pakistani media, because when we were fighting this narrative war at the international level, and we were appearing on foreign media, giving Pakistan's perspective, building our own narrative, we knew that our own domestic front was in safe hands because Pakistani media acted very responsibly. And the Pakistani media gave a message of hope to the nation, and very, very responsible reporting. Because when we were listening to the Indian media, and as information minister, I was not in favor of any ban on Indian YouTube channels, because the entertainment value of those channels had increased over time. The comic relief that they provide, destroying the port of Lahore or the port of Multan, and by destroying entire cities as per their own narrative. So I think that was much needed comic relief which was provided by the Indian media. And the whole warmongering and the whole theatrics of it all. So I think when somebody suggested to me, one of my officers came and they said, why don't we ban the Indian YouTube channel? I said, no, we must not do that. We must provide this comic relief to our citizens. It is much needed in this stress. And what we did was, one of these young employees of the digital communication department came up to me and he said, I have an idea. And in this way, we can air our national songs and patriotic songs and images of our armed forces and the Pakistani flag in India. I said, go ahead. So he came up with this plan. And when those videos had hit above 2 million views, the whole Indian nation was behind their government, asking them that how did they allow this? And they were taken by complete surprise. So I think that's the kind of innovation we had in Pakistan, that where the Indian media was resorting to its old tactics of blame game, of conspiracies, of coming up with false narratives, our people actually were going through innovative thoughts and coming up with schemes to which India had no answer. So I think every aspect, military dominance, diplomatic success, success in the field of narrative, so I think we've been blessed that this war has given Pakistan a new hope, and I've been to more than a dozen countries post this war and accompanied the Prime Minister. I can tell you for sure that the respect that we've received and the way that we've been honored everywhere, I think we as Pakistanis are extremely proud. And when we talk about the diaspora, we interact with people from the Middle East, people settled in North America, in Europe, in Australia. The way these people are treated has also been changed. So they also go out with a new hope, with a new vigor. So I think that's the kind of change that we've witnessed, where the Pakistani diaspora, the Pakistani expatriates have received a lot of respect across the globe. And who can forget that right after the war, we saw images on social media of people celebrating Pakistan's victory on the streets of Istanbul, on the streets of Baku, elsewhere in the world. So those were very heartwarming images. So when we talk about diplomatic successes, it is skillful diplomacy before the war, during the war, and after the war, which still continues and which has really given Pakistan an advantage. And I used to see the Indian Foreign Secretary appear on television with a long face and hopelessness because they had no story to tell. Because when you come up with false narratives, it is very difficult to defend one's own stance. And when your stance is based on conspiracy, falsehood, and contradictory claims, that leads to diplomatic failure. So where we celebrate Pakistan's diplomatic success, we must also realize that India has suffered diplomatic failure because of false narratives, because of a false stance, because of inherent contradictions in its policy. And that false notion of rising India, fell flat on its face, and the whole world witnessed that. And I would also like to add that the historic strategic mutual defense agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia has been celebrated at home as well as in Saudi Arabia, because every Pakistani dreams of protecting the most holiest sites of Islam, and I think we've been blessed having been granted that honor. And that strategic mutual defense agreement will go down in history as one of the most important achievements in our diplomatic history. And this recent visit to Saudi Arabia, where the economic strategic framework was launched, I think it's a great success in terms of enhancing Pakistan's FDI, enhancing trade, and taking Pakistan's trade deficit into a surplus. So I think Pakistan is now open for business. Pakistan has a good story to tell. And we see the economic turnaround, which has been positively leveraged, and countries around the world are seeing Pakistan as a good destination for investment. So I think once, right after May 2025, when the tide turned and we were blessed with a victory, the way forward now is to engage the global community, to invest in Pakistan, and to open Pakistan's ports to Central Asia. And our dear ambassador from Uzbekistan is here. And they're very keen to access Pakistan's port for their own trade. So I think we must work tirelessly to ensure that we get maximum benefit from our seaports. We've been blessed with warm water ports, and encourage more foreign direct investment in Pakistan, and use our diplomatic skills to reach new heights in the economic field. So this is an ongoing situation in which Pakistan's diplomacy has not only succeeded, but it continues to reach new heights, and we've engaged our friendly countries. And I would also like to pay my compliments to the Prime Minister because of his personal rapport and chemistry and the way that he's engaged world leaders in this entire situation. I think kudos to him. And even recently, when President Donald Trump asked him to speak out of all the leaders of the world who were present there, so I think it was an honor for Pakistan, and especially for Pakistanis residing in the United States. They must have felt a sigh of relief. They must have realized that there is hope for Pakistan. And I think behind these successes is the unity of thought and action between the civil and military leadership. I must acknowledge that. Without this unity, none of these successes would have been possible. And we hope that this unity continues so that Pakistan, which has rightly claimed its place, a respectable place in the Community of Nations, can prosper, and the people of Pakistan, wherever they may be in the world, can walk with their heads held high that we are Pakistanis, and Pakistan has done a great service to humanity. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very grateful for this.